Welcome to episode 5 of Homebrew How To.
Wow, that's a lot of grain. We've seen a lot of grain so far. We saw an extract brew, we saw a brew in a bag, an all-in-one, a 3-vessel system. Now we're gonna go see a gravity system. So we're gonna kick it over to Twan so he can tell us a little bit more about who this brewer is.
Hey, we're gonna see Kurt Schueler today at his home brewery, Schuh Brewing, to check out his gravity-fed system. And he's got the works. He's got the igloo mash tun. He's built up his tier system, and he'll be brewing a smash beer today. So let's go check him out. All right, let's go see Schuh Brewing. All right, we're here at Schuh Brewing with Kurt Schueler, and he'll be brewing on his 3-tier gravity-fed system.
All right, so the first step here of our brewing process is to mash in your grain. And mashing in basically is just adding hot water to the grain. Throw your grain in, get it to the right temperature. You want your mash at the right temp because that's where the conversion of the starch to sugar is going to take place. If you have your temperature too low or too high, that won't happen. It'll denature the enzymes, but if everything's right, the enzymes will help break down the starches into sugar, and then that's what the sugar is going to be used to be converted to alcohol for your beer. I've got into home brewing about 4 or 5 years ago. I had a buddy that brewed, he did extract brewing, and so we did a Scotch ale, and he showed me the process, and it was simpler than I thought. And I really like to cook, and so I figured, why not try and brew some beer? And I decided I want to try and get into grain, so I went to grain, and I've been brewing with grain ever since. Really enjoyed brewing the Belgian beers. I spent some time in Europe when I was in the service, and I tasted lots of different Belgians, and they're just delicious, so I do a lot of that. There's so much to learn, and I'm just kind of on a journey here, learning how to homebrew.
All right, so in every homebrew how-to, we make sure that we have our draft tops to present to the home brewer, and we also have our featured beer from Tradition. Brian's going to tell you a little bit about this episode 5 featured beer.
So for episode 5, we got our brand new Tradition Gold. It's a Belgian-style triple. Brewed this up with mostly Pilsner malt, and then threw a little bit of torrefied wheat and some Belgian candy syrup in there. About 8.5% ABV, and yeah.
All right, Kurt, this is for you, and we'll
you.
get you opening your first Tradition beer. Make it topless.
Once the mash is complete, then we'll put the mash tun up here, and we'll do what's called a lauter. And basically, what we're going to do is drain some of the mash into these buckets here. And what you want to do is basically take some of the mash, and you want to put it back on top. And what you're doing is trying to run some of the liquid through to get rid of the little bits of grain and husk and other things that have settled towards the bottom. And what you're trying to do is build a filter with the mash. And so we'll do several containers of liquid until it starts to run clear. Once it's running clear, then we'll start putting the liquid into the boil pot, and we'll just go ahead and then move on to the sparge. I've got the mash running pretty clear. We'll go ahead and start the sparge. We're just basically rinsing the grain, and this forward. And we're just going to put this hot water on top of the grain bed here. And I use this as an opportunity to also kind of rinse off my tools that I was using. I got nice hot water here, so this will just basically cleaning these while I
Saving the sea turtles. Less water.
That's right.
Hey, so if you notice the color, it's got some amber color, and we talked to Kurt a little bit ago, and I realized I messed up. It's not a smash that we're doing. We're actually doing a pale ale here. So a smash stands for single malt and single hop. And he has a couple malts here. I think some Munich, right?
Yep.
So yeah, so this is gonna be a pale ale, so it should be good.
We've got the hot liquor tank up top. Got the mash tun here, and we've got the boil pot at the bottom. And so what we're doing is basically using gravity to help us get everything that needs to be in the boil pot in the boil pot. All right, so when I started brewing, at first I was using a combination of stools and chairs and buckets and all sorts of different things to create the gravity system here. But I wanted to get something that was a little bit more stable and usable. So I built this rig here. I got the design. I just looked at some pictures on online, and I kind of like the design. One concern for me was I wanted to be able to fit in the back of my truck, my Ranger, so that I could go mobile with it. So when there were these events where you can brew together, I could bring it with me.
A lot of times folks use a yeast starter to either multiply your yeast cells so you can pitch this into a high gravity beer, especially when you're over a 1.060 reading. But also a good thing, since I own the home brew shop, is that if I have old expired yeast, which I sell for 50% off, you can grab those, make a starter, and multiply that yeast, and you can have a half price yeast after you make a starter. Plenty of yeast to make your beer. So this is a good way to utilize a yeast starter.
All right, we're done with the sparge, and so we're going to move on towards the boil. Just going to move that over here, get it lined up properly, and we'll be off to the boil here. As soon as I can light the fire. All right, so I'm going to take a pre-boil gravity reading so I can make sure I hit my targets. And before I take the reading, I like to cool it down. So I just got a little, took a little sample here, and the quickest way to get it down to room temperature is just drop it in my beer. Cool thing about this thing is you just need a real small sample. You don't have to worry about using a hydrometer. And we are at 1.03. This are Centennial bittering hops. Put this in. We'll do 60 minutes. It'll give us about 40 IBUs at the end. All right, so we're approaching the end of the boil here. I'm going to add some Irish moss, which is going to help clarify the beer, help drop proteins and other things out of the beer. So it says to add about a teaspoon. So that's about a teaspoon, and just toss that in. We're dropping our copper immersion chiller in here. It'll both sanitize it, but it'll also release a little bit of copper into the wort, which is good for the yeast. Now we'll just hook the pump up. And so what we'll have now, we'll have ice cold water running through the immersion cooler, and then the return back into here. Here cooling down. Now we want to add some Citra, and we're just gonna dump this right in and do a pseudo whirlpool. We'll get the Citra. We'll get the Citra in there, and just get this stirring by whirlpooling it here. We're just gonna really integrate all the Citra oils and it's not going to add a lot of bitterness. It's just going to add a lot of aroma. All right, we got the beer down to 70 degrees. We're going to move the boil pot up to the second level here, and we're going to transfer the wort from the boil pot into the fermenter. I'm going to use that strainer to help filter out any of the hops and other stuff that's in the beer, in the wort that we don't want into the fermenter. And it'll also aerate the beer or the wort into the fermenter, which is important because the yeast needs oxygen to do its thing. Up here. Give it a stir here.
Sours and goes?
No, it's kettle sour, so no bacteria makes it fermented.
Hey, it's Kurt.
So it's been a few weeks. Now we're here at Tradition Brewing Company. We got Kurt with his pale ale. He just showed up with it. We're fireside on a spring day. We've got Brian, Antoine here to give us their impressions of what this beer tastes like. Let's open it up.
Hand these out to y'all. Hope you enjoy it.
I think the aroma is great. The flavor is nice and balanced, and it finishes off just that same way. It doesn't come off bitter. The balance of this beer is perfect in my opinion. You get some commercial breweries that do pale ales. I won't name any names, but at the very back end, you might get some bitterness that you can almost confuse it with maybe an IPA that doesn't have the aroma. And so to me, there's a little too bitter, but this is perfectly balanced, and I think Kurt did a great job.
It definitely drinks nice and smooth. Not sure what the final ABV came out at, but I think he was shooting for around 5.5%, and yeah, it drinks really smooth. Definitely a fan. No off flavors, no infection that I can pick up on. Great beer.
All right, well, that wraps up episode 5. I want to thank Kurt Schueler Brewing for this amazing pale ale they put together. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe on the Draft Top YouTube channel, because we're about to wrap up season 1 of Homebrew How To. And make sure you tune in next time, because our last brewer will be brewing on episode 6. Cheers.